Twitchell introduced the Sukmat idea, which is almost akin to a god. And, well, we know that was the foundation stage. Now we are in, you've introduced the Ollis. And you say the Ollis is not a god. It's not a god. But the statement here confuses me. It says, the Ollis does not decide the outcome of what takes place in creation. So I would like to personally know about the Ollis, an explanation of what it is, because it's not a god, but at the same time, the way it is referred to here would give the impression that it is a god. And I can bet you that some new friends may erroneously take the Ollis for a god, maybe a higher god. So what do you say there?
Oh, this is all funny stuff, Charles. So realistically, we're all, for the most part, we're all raised by parents. We have a father and a mother, and with religions, they use the father idea, right? What did Jesus say? I go to the Father's house to prepare a place for you. He used that father idea. Actually, if he said it, fine, but probably not. The church probably put that in there. Again, as a comfort zone. In other words, the parents are authority figures to a child because a child just takes orders. And so we really kind of stay like children in life. And this is how we're thought of, as sheep, as children, etc. We're, that those ideas have been constantly promoted. Well, when you look at the sun shining as another example, and the sun, what is it from the intellectual point of view? It's a star, isn't it? It really is a star. We'll just say that. And there's many stars in the sky, isn't it? And now with all these stars, a god is an authority, okay? It's a defined authority. And so are the stars authorities? Would you see the stars as authorities, Charles?
No.
Yeah, that's a definite no.
Yeah, the stars, you mean the stars?
Yes, the stars, like the sun, it's a star. So would you see them as authorities?
No.
Final answer, is that no? Yeah, so again, it's a yes now?
No, it's the same. It's the same no, because when you talk of authority, you bring it down to the physical level, where you have somebody in control who directs people's wills, who people's energies and all the like,
And don't forget that God is a jealous God too, right? And he gets pissed off, he has attitudes, and he wants you to fear him, and amongst other things, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not good, okay, you don't get milk and cookies, you get a lightning bolt, and maybe your house will survive. Okay, so that and amongst other things. And actually in insurance policies, okay, there's a disclaimer, and that is it says specifically, and all insurance policies carry this, okay, because the cabal wrote this, the elites, and that is not responsible, or we do not cover acts of God. That doesn't sound good, does it? In other words, when God creates the typhoons, the tornadoes, the earthquakes, the floods, the tsunamis, and even you could throw a harp in there. Okay, we're not going to cover that because that was God. That's interesting, isn't it? So now we look at the sun shining. Now, we don't see authority there, do we? And the sun's a great example of the isness life is. Now, when you take the time to see the difference, because you need the comparison, all of a sudden you should start to wake up little by little to start to understand and see what the isness is. And that it's more real than anything that has been decided or any God that's looked to. And all of a sudden, you can see that, wow, it's all awareness. It's everything. And there are no authorities in life. You see, this is where, yes, from the personal mind, it would seem that, and I've heard people comment that, oh, the all is just another idea of a God. Because that's all they know. Because again, and most people want an authority. They feel safe with an authority. It's just like children feel safe with their parents. It's understandable. And you know, most of what we learn and relate to and react to is from our parents, simply because we were raised. And for the most part, that's how life is. Even when people are adults, they still cling to their mothers. They don't see them as individuals, but someone that will take care of them and who's the authority. And people clamor to this until the very last moment. And then when the father or mother leaves, they break down. When my mother left, it was fine. There was no emotion. When my dad left, it was fine. There's no emotion. I see them as being to being. They're on their own journey. They're making their own decisions. It's just somebody I knew while I was here. You see, I'm not going to build upon that personality and then just create emotional attachments over nothing. We're all in the same life. Nobody disappears. Everybody is all here and now. You can relate to them at any time. All they're doing is simply leaving the physical realm, which is, they're still here and now. So this idea and relationship thinking that the isness that I'm referring to, and this is why I go into such detail to describe things, to give viewpoints as a comparison. So now that you take what is known or written about or said or been created about the God idea, and you just simply look to the sun shining as an example. This gets you going to start to understand what the isness is, and you see that there's no restrictions. With the God idea and the authorities here, which keep referring to gods, like on the money and God we trust, etc., it refers to a restriction, that you're to bow and kneel down and to be thankful that you have a God, etc. All these ideas surrounding it to encumber you, to control you. And realistically, no one needs to control anybody. This is what's so cool about what's being presented here. In other words, everything is for everyone. You can create and have whatever you want, but in this world here, people rely upon their restrictions and not the reality that they're really looking for. Even though they want it, they still rely upon their restrictions. So now you see the difference. You decide. You want to be like the sun shining? You want to relate to that? In other words, the sun is in the sky, but you are even better than that. You are even better because that's a reference to the true reality. So you can't even imagine in any way, because that's only in creation, what the true reality is. But you can learn to see it, you see? And so, yes, the world is dependent upon its intellect, but realistically, it's only decided to do that. You don't need to decide that, but yet it's still there. It's a book on the shelf, etc. So how do bees know what they're doing? And ants, as an example. And they just do what they do, and look what they produce. Honey, awesome honey when it's in its natural form. And even viruses and diseases don't live in it. And it lasts like almost, you might say, forever. It's been found thousands of years old. It's an awesome thing. And these bees climbing upon each other and doing what they're doing, each one knows what to do. You know why? Because they're in direct contact. That body is in direct contact with the real awareness. The real awareness is operating the bee. When we come eventually into the human form, we're able to make decisions, self-decisions, which this becomes our free will, which creates encumbrances. But at the same time, we need to go through this process so we can see the difference between the two. Now, coming up to speed here with what we're referring to, the God idea and the sun shining, which is not an authority, you decide. It's not about worship, it's about seeing. You decide to see and be what you decide. You see, it's all up to you. And so most of the world has decided to be worshipers, God lovers, etc. And they keep saying, well, God is love. And everybody, if it's on a football team or if it's in the armed services or whatever, they're praying to defeat the other team. They're praying to God, etc. Does this make sense? But yet to many people it does. And the idea is they're holding up their banners saying God is love, like Harry is. Oh, we're all lovers here. God is love. Well, the God that they're looking to is a reptilian. So if they want to think of the God as love, well, I look at the sun. I don't see the sun as love. I see the sun as real and awesome. It's an awesomeness that surpasses any of the personal love. And this is where it gets into a real relationship. But the sun, again, is like an agent. It's a representative, not the reality. But I'm sure glad it's there. So yes, even by that very fact, you see the difference. And God has specified itself accordingly. And it doesn't look good. And those people that read the Bible and see for what it is, what has been specified, etc. So what I'm relating to, again, is constantly referring to the ideas no restrictions. And when you go to the God idea, it's nothing but restrictions. Isn't that so?
I was listening to one of your audios the other night with my boyfriend, and Duane, you mentioned that Paul Twitchell had the rod of power, then the boys gave it to you, and so my boyfriend, he started coming out with this idea and thought, and he was actually getting frustrated about it, and he was wondering why the boys didn't send someone before Paul Twitchell if they're so real and all is. He was wondering why he didn't send anyone before, and I was trying to tell him that maybe the earth wasn't ready, maybe people weren't ready, and then I thought I would just ask Duane myself so I can get an answer for him, because I can see he was really bothered by that, and I was trying to tell him to use your awareness, and I was trying to tell him, does that really matter? And instead I just said I'd take the risk and just ask you, Duane, how come it was only you and Paul Twitchell? Was there anyone before you guys? Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, and what is your name?
My name is Cara. Nice to meet you.
Hi, hello. Yes, sweetie. No, that's fine. These things are fun. No, Rebazar and the Real Guides, they decided this position through eons. In other words, they developed themselves to eventually have what Paul termed as the rod of power. And so, yes, it was always there, and it's been related to the world. It's just that, you and your boyfriend and others, you have your experience, but you don't have the whole experience, and there's a lot more. So it takes time, just like if you're going to become a doctor, it's going to take time to become that doctor. It's just that you just can't ask the question, well, gee, why can't I be the doctor? That's kind of like asking the same thing. So, no, it has always existed. It's just that it was time. I'm not saying it's the right time. It's just that all of a sudden it's like, well, let's do it. And so this transference was given to Paul so that he would have more capability to provide what he did, have the awareness, etc. It's a backup. It's kind of like anything, to where we have 110 in our walls, we have a battery in our car, but now all of a sudden it's like you're given a super battery to drive really fast. And so that's the rod of power idea. Now, the rod of power is very interesting, as Paul brought out. And yes, in 2001, yes, it was finally ready, because it's a lot. I took it. But then I stepped back after about a year and a half or so, because it was a lot. And there was more to do, more to learn. And so in '07, it became the new wave is. Well, this is you might say, a completely new spot. The rod of power exists, but it only exists in creation. And the new wave is everything. It's the isness, because it's awareness. And the rod of power is exactly that. And the boys wanted me to change everything with it, which I did, and I even changed the levels, etc., according to what Paul did, because this is a real and new, awesome opportunity like never before. And it's the risk taker's position, because you're going into the unknown. But those people that claim to have the rod of power, well, it doesn't exist anymore in the sense that it did. And so this is the fallacy of it. And again, it's power. Power idea is in creation. And yes, we need that. It's like you power your car or whatever, or you get up and you want to be the athlete, you want to be powerful, etc. This is in creation. But the whole of life, which I see, which I like, this isness, it's awareness. And that is through everything. And so, yes, you still have to deal with your personal self. And I just wrote a group, and I wrote many of them on this, and that is facing yourself. First of all, you need to figure out yourself, your personal self, your identity, etc., so you have really a good comparison to better understand this. And for the most part, people approach this like they would religion or a spiritual path, which I understand. But this is not it. There's a whole lot more to it that's not seen. It's not confined and condensed like those things are of a particular, and especially with the cute spiritual love idea and the God idea and the angels and saviors and all these other things. This is really a setup in creation, and this is why in the books that I've written, I call these the designated heavens, like the astral and the mental worlds where people will go. Well, people have been designated to go there, and they will be designated to come back. It's the same old cycle. But the rod of power idea, etc., yes, it's basically always existed, but it becomes a little bit too much for society as it is. So, again, the boys take a chance just by bringing it out, because there are repercussions. Because with this rod of power, there's cause and effect in creation. You're always dealing with cause and effect. So, they also have to be ready to handle the effects, because they have to deal with it. And this is where, when you have the real guidance and you have tap linings and all that, well, the guides come in and they start removing these things. Again, you're dealing with cause and effect. It's very touchy here in creation. It's not like we think, where you just think a thought and it becomes so. It's kind of like saying when the chemtrails are above, it's like, well, I don't believe in those, so it just X's them out. Well, it really doesn't, does it? So it's more than that. But yeah, people are going to get frustrated over these ideas, but they need to take the time to learn, or they don't, or they'll just keep being frustrated, won't they?
Mm-hmm. So he was creating his own frustration over nothing, over something that didn't really matter.
Well, it's something that he doesn't really know about also, does he? I would become more frustrated over the chemtrails, the vaccines, the HAARP, the 5G, just by starting your car and poisoning yourself and everybody else, etc. And it's funny, most people don't become frustrated with that. They're okay with it. It's become a standard, and it's nuts. It's really nuts. And so what we're presenting here, to finally recognize what's going on.
Finally
recognize where you're at and what you're in and what you can do about it. This is why I call it the real cure for all. I have fun with that. Well, the real cure is to recognize your real awareness and get on with your journey and support those that also, because this is how you'll learn from others as the most. And the real guides, they you might say they push this along to where, people, get together and better understand, just like what we're doing in the Skype here, to sort things out, because there's a lot to sort out. Because look at your personal self. Just take the time every moment to watch every thought and impression that you decide. and those things that you react to. Who will take the time to do that? And for the most part, the personal self will go, well, gee, everything I'm doing and thinking is fine. Is it? Are you sure? You got your cell phone, you got your car, gee, life is good, right? Everything is fine. You don't see how it overall adds to the demise of everything, but yet it's fine to the personal self because it's self-satisfied. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's what's really taking place. And do you want to keep going with that until you're 99 years old and you pass out and forget you were here? Or do you want to decide something different and take on the challenge and the adventure and the risk to provide something that makes sense? You always have that choice, don't you?
Every second we always have that choice.
Yes, and
Yeah.
lots of times the questions that people have become excuses to do nothing. And so the end result will be they will get nothing, you see.
Get nowhere.
Yeah. Yes, sweetie.
Wow.
Yes, you.
That's amazing. I have another question if you don't mind.
Go ahead, take your time.
Thank you. So you mentioned top lining and how we can be top line in literally every way, front, back, sideways, up, down, whatever direction we could, with so many different ideas by the brats that you call them. So my boyfriend had mentioned a comment, you know, what if I could find the truth within myself? What if I don't need to sing the new you? What if I don't believe in top lines, then I can't be top lined? And I was saying that it's not about belief, it is what it is, and you could believe it whether you want to or not, but this is going on. And he was saying, no, if I don't believe it, it's impossible. I can't be top line. So if I don't believe it, then it can't happen. Can you just say anything about that?
Well, just imagine your boyfriend and he's standing in a circle. Maybe it's 6 feet round. And inside the circle, there's the big word belief, okay? So realistically, he's standing in that idea, isn't he? And
Yeah.
so he's pivoting off that idea. It's like, I'm in this circle, and this is what I believe, and nothing can touch me.
Mm-hmm.
But you're standing outside the circle, and you're looking at him, and you're kind of giggling because you know that it's funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again, just like the chemtrails in the sky, you know, you point those out. Just take a test. Go down the street and say, "Oh, wow, do you see those streakings in the sky? Do you know what those are?" And a lot of people say, "No, I don't." And you could say, "Well, they're chemtrails. They're poisoning us." And what do most people say? "Oh, I don't believe that."
Right.
But it's still happening, isn't it? Yeah.
Right.
And the 5G and your Wi-Fi and all this radiation, it's still happening, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so, you know, I refer to the dark rats or whatever. I have fun with this. And the idea is that it's really, they don't even have to do anything anymore because it's all on automatic. Everybody has so agreed that everybody is doing it to themselves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where this is where each person decides every moment. You decide what your life is. And so for the most part, the personal self, again, see, it's going to use that idea as an excuse. It's like, well, I don't believe that, so that means I don't have to do anything about it. Well, it's true. You have the right to do nothing at all. But it will, its cause and effect, it will always show up, especially when you leave this world, okay? This is where you get an objective view. This is where when you go to sleep at night, you might say you've left the personal consciousness and you get these altered views. But again, you have to learn to recognize what's going on. There's many ways to see that. So yes, I don't bother a person. If a person says, I don't believe that, I just go, okay, fine, have fun. And that's it. I don't try to talk them out of what they decide, belief or not, or it's like, or I don't want to think about that, or I know people that I talk to about these certain things that'll come up and they say, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to hear about it. And so I respect that. It's fine. Yeah. So What can be said about that? Each person is the decider, and so eventually you figure it out. It's not about relationships. You know, we're brought into this world. What's the basic idea? Boy meets girl. Okay, that's the basic idea. And be fruitful and multiply, etc. Oh, it's all acute happening. Well, yeah, these are things that occur, but there's still a lot more to us, and we decide, each one of us, to explore that. So I had a family, I had a daughter, I had a business, I was a general contractor for 40 years, etc. I did all these things. Well, then I decided to, and at the same time I was with the corporation, and I was doing a lot with that, because that came first. So what I did, my lifestyle supported that and doing this, but you are the decider. But I left all of that at the best of times simply because this is what I wanted to do. This became more important than just living out my life and growing old like everybody else, but taking on the risk and risking my life and facing it all. That's what I like. I like the challenge. I like to see into the unknown. I like to see what's going to come up, and I relate it according to what's taking place every moment. So again, see, that's a decision that I've made, and just like your boyfriend, he's made his decisions. And so I've learned that when people make a statement, it's like, I believe this or I don't believe that. It's like, okay, cool. You see? And when
Right, there's no point on trying to tell them, just let them figure it out.
it's their life and it's their right,
Yeah.
right or wrong, or if they're going to go blow up a building or something, hey, it's like, see, I'm going over here. The thing is, I'm not a do-gooder. I would say to them something like, well, I suggest you don't do that, but you decide, you'll find out. And it's just like sometimes people will ask me, do you believe in God? And my answer to that is, I'm fine with everything. You see? And I am. If people believe in God, that's fine. But that's not my focus. My focus is the isness and the adventure and the challenge that comes with that. That's my focus. But these are ideas that I relate to people, and that's all they are. They're ideas. When you're having a conversation with your boyfriend or anybody, you're just simply exchanging ideas. That is not the reality. Life is. There's a difference.